In this video, I'm going to show you how to create relationships, different ways to set up relationships between tables. As you know, if you have two tables, in order to analyze data in one table by columns in another table, there has to be a relationship between these two tables. If we go to the Manage Relationship, if we click on the Manage Relationship button, we can now see that we have only 5 relationships in our model. But we have quite a few tables that we imported. We have 2 fact tables, reseller cells, internet cells, and we have quite a few lookup tables. So we can definitely benefit from more relationships in the model. Now, let's switch to the reseller cells table, and each column that has an icon in the column header is related to a column to another table. So for example, the order date, due date, ship date, and ship date actually have already relationships. But the reseller key table does not have a relationship established. Yet we have a reseller table which has a reseller key column, and the values in that column match the values in the reseller key. Both of them are kind of integer, and both of them actually represents the system identifier of each reseller. When we have matching columns, creating a relationship is very easy. The only thing that you need to do is to right-click on the table in the right-click on the column header and click Create Relationship. That brings us to the familiar Create Relationship dialog, where you have to select a related table and related column. Now, usually when you set up a relationship, you start from the many side of the relationship. It probably sounds a little bit confusing, so let's just take a moment to explain that. In this case, the reseller table represents a list of resellers, and each row in that table represents an individual reseller. Each reseller can have many sales recorded in the reseller sales table. So the reseller sales table is on the many side of the relationship. That's why I started from reseller cells to create a relationship to the reseller table. But don't worry about this too much, because even if you get the direction wrong, the Power Pivot is going to detect this, is going to display a warning in this dialog, and when you click Create, it's going to reverse the relationship for you. So we can follow the same technique to create a relationship between the employee key table, employee key column, and the employee table on the employee key column, and also on the currency key column in the reseller cells to the AWID column in the currency table. But sometimes the things are not so straightforward. For example, if we take a look now at the sales territory key column, that will be a good candidate to join to the sales territory table. Let's now click on sales territory table. However, as we can see here, we don't have a matching column. We don't have a column that has integer values that we can join to reseller cells. So there are different ways. As a workaround, there are different approaches depending on your particular situation, the data you're importing, your data source. In our case, the sales territory table was imported from the AdventureWorks cube. And it so happened that the modeler has used the sales territory key column from the database as a dimension key. Now, this is kind of an advanced technique that I'm going to show you in a moment, because it assumes knowledge of cubes and knowledge of MDX. But still, this is something that your cube modeler can help you with to bring the desired to bring the column that you need in order to create a join. If you join data from heterogeneous data sources, for example, a relational database in a cube. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to click on Table Properties to go back to the MDX statement. Now, because the release candidate of Power Pivot has an issue switching to design mode, where we can use the drag and drop technique. So what I'm going to do to get around this limitation, I'm going to delete this MDX statement, and I'm going to click on the design button, which will bring me to the MDX Query Designer in drag and drop graphical design mode. And I have to recreate the query since I lost it. This is the same query that we used in the chapter 3. In order to bring the column that I need, I'm going to create something called a calculated member. And I'm going to name this calculated member sales territory key. The expression that I'm going to use for this calculated member, I'm just going to copy and paste this expression. The most important part of this MDX expression is that it requests the member key property of the sales territory region. So once I create that calculated member and bring it to the query, that's exactly the column that I need in order to create the join. So now I'm going to click OK to go back to the Edit Table Properties, and I'm going to click Save to re-import the sales territory table into in order to bring that new column that I just added to the query. Let's go and rename this column to sales territory key, and let's go and hide it from client tools because I only need it for the join. And finally, let's go and change its data type to whole number because Power Pivot is not capable to detect the data type from calculated members. So now that I have this new column, I can go back to Reseller Sales and I can create a relationship to the sales territory table. All right. So this is an approach that you can use for analysis services cubes. But what about if you import data from a relational database and you still have a missing column, so you cannot, you don't have an easy way to create relationships? For example, let's go back to the reseller sales table, and let's take a look at the product key column. Now, this column has integer values. But if we go to the product table, which we imported from reporting services report, it doesn't have a matching column. However, in that table we have a product number, which we can use, kind of uniquely identifies the products in the product table. So what we have to do now, I have to change the reseller sales. I have to use a custom query in order to bring that product number in the reseller sales table so I can create a join. And to do that, I have to go to the Design tab. I'm going to click on Table Properties. In the Edit Table Properties dialog, I'm going to switch to the Query Editor in order to get to the actual SQL select statement. And if I know SQL at this point, I can go and create a join in order to join to the product table and bring the column that I need. But if you use SQL Server, there's an easier way to do that. You can click on the Design button and you can depress this Edit as Text so you can switch to the Visual Designer. Now, the downside of doing this is that you're going to lose the select statement, but it's very easy to recreate that because what we had to do is just select the factory seller cells in order to import all the columns from that table. And if I know that the product number column that I need is actually called product alternate key in the dim product table, I can just go ahead and select it. If there is a referential integrity in the database, if the DBA has defined joins in the database, then I don't have to know how to join these two tables together. But in an absence of joins and referential integrity, what I can do is to switch back to Edit as Text and actually join these two tables on the common columns in order for them to be related properly. So let's go and click OK, click Save. Power Pivot is going to re-import the seller sales table and is going to add that new column, product alternate key, at the end of the table. I'm going to hide that column from Client Tools because I only need it for the join, and I'm going to create a relationship to the product table on the product number. And I can use the same technique for the internet sales table. I'm going to go to the table properties. I'm going to switch to the query editor. I'm going to click on the design button, depress edit as text, go and click the fact internet sales, and from the product table, click the product alternate key. And click OK to re-import that table, the internet sales table. And once this is done, just go all the way to the end of the table, scroll to the right, hide the new column, and create a relationship to the product table. Actually, let's not do that because I want to show you in a moment a different technique for creating relationships. And that technique is to use a new feature in Power Pivot 2.0 called Diagram View. So if I go to the Home tab, I see there is a button called here called Diagram View. I'll find the same a similar button in the lower right corner that allows me to switch between the Data View and Diagram View. Let's go ahead and click on Diagram View. And as you can see, the Diagram View shows me the the model schema in a graphical way. And if I scroll all the way to the Reseller internet sales table, I can see that it's not related to the product table. Let's go and drag this the internet table a little bit to the left, just to put it closer to the product table. So what I can do in Diagram View is actually it's very easy to create relationships once I have matching columns, of course. I can just scroll to the bottom of the table to locate the product alternate key column that I just added, and I can just go and drag this column to the product number column in the product table, to the corresponding column that I want to join to. And I can use a similar technique to establish other relationships that I need. For example, the internet sales table is not related to the date table at all, but certainly in the internet sales table there is a order date key, due date key, ship date key, all of them actually that can be joined to the date table. So we're going to drag the order date key, we're going to drop it to the date key in the date table, the same thing for the due date and for the ship date key. Sometimes in the diagram view the tables are too far apart from each other to conveniently use the drag and drop technique. In this case, what you can do is to right click on the column in the let's say in the internet sales on the currency key column, and then say create relationship, and that brings us back to the create relationship dialog where I just need to specify the matching columns. And probably I can do the same thing for the sales territory key. Join to the sales territory table. So now we can have all the joins that we need. Now the diagram view is not only just useful for creating relationships. You can use it for other things. For example, you can use it for hiding columns. For example, in the customer table, we have a few system columns such as customer key, geography, customer alternate key that are not useful for analysis, so we can right click and say hide from client tools. And as you can see, the columns that are hidden from client tools, they appear grayed out. And that pretty much concludes the tutorial, this video tutorial. If I go back to the design menu and click on manage relationships, now I can see a whole lot more relationships added to the model, and that will help me analyze data across tables.